Welcome to The Writer's Dream, where books and authors abound. Our show devotes itself to readers and writers who want to know how stories become books. The authors talk about how their books are written, how they're published, and how they're marketed. If you are a writer, you'll find many, many hints here and a lot of good information. And if you're a reader, you'll find a lot of good books. We are on YouTube. We are on Facebook. Obviously, we are called The Writer's Dream. If you have a question for us, please address it to the Writer's Dream page, and I will do my best to address the question. If you are interested in doing the show, please contact me at lmf217@hotmail.com. Today's guest is Marianne Dalto, and she has written He Counts Their Tears. Marianne, tell us a little bit about your background, because I think it's influenced your book.
Well, this is my first book. I am many things. I am most of all an author. And all through the rest of my careers, I've always been writing and scribbling in books. I am an attorney. I was with many large Wall Street law firms for many years. I now work for myself in a variety of capacities as an attorney. But mostly I'm a writer. I can remember when I was a college student at Barnard College at Columbia University, scribbling in my books, writing poetry and short stories, on the way to the museums as the art history major. I should have known then that something or someone was telling me that I should be writing books.
Except for the fact that you had to make a living.
Well, yes. So I did go to law school after first getting a master's degree at Columbia University. Then I went on and did become an attorney. And I've been practicing law for many years now as a defense lawyer, now doing other sorts of law work. But I've always loved to write. I love poetry. I love great literature. Louisa May Alcott, I must say, remains my favorite. Nothing beats Little Women. It's an amazing book. There's wonderful work out there, and it's incredible. Yes, thank you.
But, no, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
It's fine. It's fine.
Okay, so tell us about He Counts Their Tears. What's it about? Is it fiction, nonfiction?
He Counts Their Tears is fiction. Absolutely an amazing read and a page-turner because it speaks to the evil that lurks beneath the surface of reality. It is the story of Aaron Stein, a doctor who's a psychopath. He also happens to be
Nothing
charming.
like a doctor who's a psychopath. It always instills confidence.
Well, you know, there are just about 1% of the male population is psychopath. And I know that because of the way I ended up writing the book, which I'll tell you when we get to that point. But to answer your question in terms of what the book's about, it's about the way people just, every once in a while, just get under your skin and get into your soul. How these people, these psychopaths, will charm, get involved with someone, and then just walk away. It's what they do. It's the thrill of the chase. They rarely plan to stay for long. Their intent is to get into someone's mind. Why? Because they crave power and control. And this story is the story of Dr. Aaron Stein, who charms his way into many different lives, some with amorous intentions, some not, always intending one thing, to leave. And the leaving is the part he loves, because that's the thrill of knowing that.
At least he doesn't murder them.
Well, I wouldn't say that doesn't
Okay.
take place in the book. I wouldn't say that he did any of it. There might be some murders in the story. One doesn't know yet. This book speaks to the very concept of what is illusion. That's why the cover is black and white, because the whole idea is seeing something in black and white, something that may appear to be wonderful. You meet people every day who seem very happy. Maybe one or two of them have met a psychopath who walks away from them. And they're not about to say, guess what, I was just left by this horrible person. Because it's an inner feeling that they're experiencing of discomfort. Where did this person go? How did they get into my mind? They did it, as is shown in the story, by the means psychopaths use to get into a person's heart, by disarming them, by using covert hypnosis, which I just loved learning about.
So that's where He Counts Their Tears comes from. He gets into there.
Absolutely.
By finding out what their vulnerable spot is.
And pouncing.
So tell me about the hypnosis.
I've done
I'm fascinated here with your research.
Thank you. I have done some research on covert hypnosis, which began with the research I did on psychology, which is how the book got written to begin with. I was very interested in adding to my repertoire being a psychoanalyst. So being someone who loves school and thought I would just take on a new skill, I applied. This eventually answers your question about covert hypnosis. I was going to become a psychoanalyst and add this to my own business practice. It looked wonderful. It was great. The school, of course, will remain unmentioned. I do think very highly of them. They decided not to accept me. And I don't think there are many people who would sit there on television and talk about not being accepted, but I think it's really important to face what happens to us, to accept it. I think I was more surprised than anything else not to be accepted.
Shocked.
I think I was also shocked, yes, indeed.
Did they give you a reason?
They said I wasn't suited to be a psychoanalyst, which again is just reality. They're probably
Did
right.
they tell you why?
Well, it was pointed out that I didn't exactly possess the sort of attributes that one would have. I suppose
Like
there wasn't
what?
sufficient compassion there. One needed to be more compassionate, perhaps more focused on psychology. I've never taken a psychology course, and I don't claim to have done so. I'm not a psychologist. I'm a lawyer. I never took psychology as an undergrad at Barnard. Astronomy was my science requirement.
There you go.
Which might explain why one of the characters in the book does like to go look at the stars. But the point is, now I had all this interest that I developed in psychology, particularly the whole concept of personality disorders. What was I going to do with it? Well, I wasn't about to just sit there. So I began reading online, and I became absolutely fascinated with the concept of the psychopath and how it is that these individuals will follow a very, very specific pattern. They will go trolling for people, not sort of like going out there driving looking for people, but although at one point Aaron, the character, does find someone that way, just from their interactions, and they will sniff out, they will sense the one person with some vulnerabilities. Begin creating a friendship with that person, get that person's attention, begin to create the illusion, and I do say illusion, of a friendship or a possible romance. They will begin to see if they can test the boundaries with that individual. And then, once they get bored, they'll move on.
The key word here, I think, with all of this is vulnerability, because this is the same pattern with serial killers.
Yes.
You know, serial killers will pick prostitutes, and people will say, well, that's because they are angry because the prostitutes are prostitutes. No, prostitutes are standing there on the street. They're vulnerable and they're accessible.
Exactly.
Same thing with children.
That's right, Linda. The psychopath will be able to sense in a room full of people, as happens in this book, the one or maybe two people who are receptive because they are vulnerable. They're missing something in their life. They're usually good people. And what I would say to anyone who has had an encounter with a psychopath is congratulations. Why do I say that? Because you were a good enough person. You have goodness in you. The psychopath senses that. What they're going to do is begin mirroring the person's behavior patterns. And oddly enough, the quote-unquote victim who thinks they're the love interest or the friend discovers that they and the psychopath have so much in common. Of course, they really don't. The psychopath is simply changing his persona to suit this individual, to create a sense of comfort, which is what Aaron Stein does in the book. Once they've developed this, they begin to toy with the person to see, as Aaron does in the book, they begin to see how far they can push this person, to push the limits. It's all for the game. It's all for the conquest. And then when they get bored, they leave. The leaving is usually very sudden. The discard is something that I explored intensely in the book. In terms of what it does to the person who can't understand why all of a sudden they're completely shocked. What's happened? They really don't know what's happened because they don't know that they've been had. Once they realize that shame sets in, they can't exactly sit with their girlfriends and say, oh, guess what? I was just had by this fool who walked away and I wish he would come back. They can't say that because that would be admitting to what they're feeling. And that's what I'm showing in the book, that the person who cannot say that is experiencing a great deal of emotion. Aaron goes through many different characters in the book and experiences the different ways of leaving them, which gives a thrill to him each time. That's why he counts their tears.
I see.
Yes.
So what inspired you to write this book?
In becoming very interested in the concept of personality disorders, I realized I wanted to do something with the knowledge. So I sat down and I just started writing, and all of a sudden I was writing the book.
So even though you were not accepted into a psychoanalyst course of studies, you still are so fascinated with this that you went and wrote a book.
Yes, I couldn't leave the knowledge undone. I had to do something with it. So I started writing. And what I did was I took the basic concept of the psychopath and I began to create a character around it. Before you knew it, Aaron was on the ledge. And that's the opening line of the book, that Aaron had never noticed how thin his shoelaces were.
Do you want to read?
I would be delighted. Shall I read you the first page?
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to do that. These were my father's glasses, so I'm going to wear them. Okay. Chapter 1, On the Ledge, of He Counts Their Tears. Aaron had never noticed how thin his shoelaces were. He was looking at them as he stood on the edge of the roof of Harbor Hospital. He was looking at his shoelaces. He had never noticed them before. He had been too busy living his life. Now here he was, standing on the edge of the roof, his white jacket fluttering in the wind. Aaron Stein, M.D., said the name tag on his jacket. He had been so proud to wear that name tag, so proud of what it represented. He was a medical doctor and a highly regarded fertility specialist. A lapsed Catholic and virulent hater of all religious beliefs, Aaron saw himself as superior to all, including God himself. Patients flocked to him because of what they believed to be an extraordinary expertise and success rate, even in women who had given up the hope of ever bearing a child. But it was all an illusion, as was Aaron himself. Really, it was the extraordinary team of physicians, nurses, and physician assistants who made the fertility department at Harbor Hospital the miracle haven for which it had become so well known. Aaron was simply a face in the crowd, presented as Harbor Hospital's most brilliant mind, simply because he was the nephew of the hospital's benefactor, the late philanthropist, Dr. Richard Stein. It was beneficial to the hospital's image to attribute its success, particularly in the mysterious field of artificial reproduction, to someone with whom the patients and the public could identify. The hospital saw nothing unethical in their actions because they were always careful to refer to Dr. Aaron Stein and his remarkable team whenever they spoke of the fertility department. Aaron was so highly regarded that he often referred to himself in jest as God's twin on earth. God and I both create life, he would say. I just do it better. It instantly impressed people, and Aaron knew it. He was handsome and very successful. His was a glorious life. Or at least it had been until 3 days ago. Now, a woman lay in a coma, near death, and all because of him, all because of Aaron. The woman in the coma had been his friend, or at least that was what she'd thought. Aaron knew what she'd really been. She had simply been his latest victim. But he had played it too close to the edge this time. He had taken too many risks, and now he was going to be found out. He would be in a world of trouble. The woman in the coma, the woman with the tubes in her body, the woman whose gentle smile had unknowingly telegraphed to Aaron, "I am ready, pray," was Louisa, a doctor in the very hospital where he himself worked. That's the first page.
Yes, it is absolutely a page turner. I can see that right now. Yeah. You have all those elements. You have the evil person, the innocent victim, and medicine.
Yes.
People love stories that involve medical practices of various kinds because it feeds into their fear of medical practices and what it can do to you.
Yes, yes. Many of the scenes that take place in the book do take place at Harbor Hospital, which of course is a fictitious hospital, which is basically supported by the wealth of the Stein Foundation, which is the family that Aaron Stein, the lapsed Catholic and virulent hater of all religions, hails from. What's important to me in terms of presenting the characters is to explain that they're really any individual who happens to encounter the psychopath. I was very careful not to make this a collection of short stories. While there are a number of different people whom Aaron encounters, it isn't as if you finish one chapter and move on to the next one. They sort of intertwine, which is the way these individuals operate. While he's dealing with one, he's trolling for the next. he's thinking about the next. And of course, there's the wife. What would it be without the wife, the constant who's home for him? Actually, the wife's name is Ruth, and Ruth Stein is a doctor who is extremely successful. Yet at home, she is the very subservient and submissive wife to Aaron. Most psychopaths, as I learned from my research, do have a spouse at home. It's a wonderful cover. It gives the veer of normalcy. Not that being not married is not a wonderful situation for everyone, and of course that's deeply respected, but in the case of a psychopath, having a spouse is a great excuse for not going further in a relationship in terms of giving one's all emotionally or in any other sense. One can step back and say, as Aaron does in the story, but you got the wrong impression, I have a wife at home. When in reality, Aaron has been giving all of this image and implication to his supposed love interest that he's interested. He can gracefully step away and move on, and of course he moves on as if nothing happened. He moves on, leaving devastation in his path, but this is the thrill of the psychopath. This is what they live for, to count the tears, as the title says, to create horror even after they're gone, so that even when they've moved on, and of course they come back and toy with the victims in a variety of ways, by the odd phone letter, the phone call, the message of sorts, just to see if they've still got some control, because what it comes down to is that power and control is everything, which is why somebody like Aaron Stein would choose the form of medicine he did, believing that he can almost create life itself. What he's doing as the psychopath is creating a living horror for his victims, who walk into the scenario thinking they've met their soulmate, their best friend, someone who will be there for them. It's the horror that exists beneath the veneer of normalcy. People walk around having experiences, never speaking about it, because how many people are going to sit there and say that they've been taken in by somebody? Not many people.
It's true. It's very true. Tell me about, this is your first book.
It is.
Tell me about the process of writing.
Well, the process of writing involves a great deal of candy and coffee and lots of sugar.
Candy.
Oh yes, candy's a good thing. I tell myself that candy consumed while writing a book has no calories. I know that's not true, but I'd like to believe it. The process of writing a book, I'm sure, is different for each one of us, but I would be absolutely delighted, Linda, to share with you what it was for me. It means finding the time. It means making the time. It means creating an additional day of the week. And I discovered that's possible. I did.
You sound like Aaron.
I know. Actually, that's wonderful. I think what Aaron would do is make people believe that he had created an additional day of the week, whereas I actually did so. That's the difference between...